Before that, we started things off with the band Flying Colors. That was called Blue Ocean. Now, check out their website, flyingcolorsmusic.com, for info on how the band got together and tour dates. A lot of cool stuff on their website. And that brings us to our guest this week. Very excited to have Oliver Wakeman here. He's got a lot to say about being in Yes, being out of Yes, as well as projects he's worked on, both solo and collaborations, and a lot more. So here's part one of my conversation with Oliver Wakeman. All right, we are sitting with Oliver Wakeman. Oliver, thanks so much for joining us.
It was a pleasure.
Let's start with the most recent stuff that's going on. What are you up to now?
Well, currently, I've just finished putting together in the demo format my new solo album, which is called Cultural Vandals. It's currently out being pitched to a couple of companies, and the response seems to be pretty good. So I'm hoping that in the next few weeks, I'll be in a position to start going in and recording.
Nice.
And aiming for a release by the end of the year. It's been a busy old time. But the trouble is when you stop, you're playing every night out with Yes or Straubs, you're quite visible. And then suddenly, when you're just writing for a year, you suddenly disappear off the radar. Right. And so you suddenly sort of think, God, nobody knows who you are anymore. But no, so I spent a long time working on that. And I've also written another large-scale project, which is still in its middle stages, but I'm not really talking about that too much at the moment until it gets going a bit more. So the solo album is very important. That's going to be the next visible project that I do. But I'm also working with a very talented guitarist. I don't know whether he was particularly well known in America. In England, he was very well respected. Guitarist called Gordon Giltrap.
Okay.
He's one of those guitarists that in the 70s had some very big rock albums. And also he had a lot of music that was taken from those albums and used on very popular TV shows in England. So he's well known for a certain couple of pieces of music. But he's been working acoustically for maybe 20 years now. And he wrote to me and just said, I'd like to do something rocky again. And he thought of calling me up, and so we talked about it. And so that's the project that comes after the solo album.
And do you incorporate the Oliver Wakeman band with Gil, or with Gordon,
no,
or is this something separate?
No, the my band will be doing the Cultural Vandals record.
Uh-huh.
But the band with Gordon, it's going to be a mixture of music. It's going to be a half acoustic-y sort of affair and half rock sort of affair.
Nice.
Because it gives us the opportunity to play to our strengths over a whole album without making the whole album sound samey and a bit predictable. Mm-hmm. So we don't know the number of pieces. It will depend on how it works out at the moment. But, we're hoping for about 4 or 5 acoustic-ys, 4 or 5 big rock epic-y numbers, which are coming together quite nicely. It's going to be very much in the sort of, well, I'd like to say rock sort of progressive vein, but anybody that's heard Gordon will know he has such an individual style. And If they don't know Gordon, they just need to flick onto YouTube and try and find some of his early stuff. Okay. And you'll see that he's quite a unique guitarist. So that's going to be very exciting. We're going to have a vocalist and put a band together for the recording. Then we're going to go out as a duo acoustically at the end of this year. And then the beginning of next year, we have 20 dates lined up in the UK for a tour. And then if the album comes out around the beginning of the year and everything seems to be doing okay, we will look at taking it further afield and maybe even putting the band together to take it, on the road and actually hopefully play some music from, my past and the bands I've been involved with, along with Gordon's stuff from his early days and the new album.
That sounds very exciting. That sounds really awesome.
Yeah, it will be when I finish writing.
So you're juggling all these different projects plus family and all that stuff. How do you find the time?
It does get busy. I mean, the worst thing and the best thing about being a writer, when you're performing, I mean, obviously with Yes and with the Straubs, I played an awful lot. I mean, I worked out that over a 3-year period, I think I spent at least a year of it in America, not including the time that I spent in Europe or in South America or Canada. And your playing becomes very good because you're playing every night. And you sort of get into that sort of state of mind of performing and playing and the life on the road, which is great. And then you sit down and you try to write. And now I've written a lot of music. I've done about 10 albums now.
Right.
And you always forget just how difficult and torturous it can be sometimes. Sometimes I'll sit down at the piano and a piece will come in literally 2-3 minutes, almost the amount of time it takes to play the song. The whole thing just comes. And you think, blimey, where did that come from? That's terrific. And then another time, you'll sit there and you'll just come up with some tiny idea, and then maybe 6 months later, the next part will come along. And, you know, and I can sit here for a whole day, and I'm a real one that I feel I always have to be achieving and doing something. Mm-hmm. And if I've sat here for 3 hours and all I've come away with is 2 notes, I get very annoyed with myself. But then I just look up at my shelf and see the CDs that I've written and been involved with, and then I think, no, you can do it. It just it just takes time.
Just got to hit your groove.
I also think there's an element with writing which anybody that's listening that's also composers will probably be able to identify with. When you've written lots of music, particularly for me, I don't know how many songs and pieces of music I've written now, but it must be over 100, 150. But you end up coming to a point where you're so desperate not to repeat yourself because you want a piece of music to retain an identity. I like each piece of music that I write to be identifiable as that song. And it's a trick that Yes did very well. A lot of their songs are immediately identifiable, and the Strawbs exactly the same. Whereas there are certain bands, and I'm not thinking of any band in particular, but I know I picked up records before, and if you listen to track 4 and then skip to track 8, it could quite easily be the same song.
Right.
Now, I can't say exactly why that is, but for me, it's something that I'm always very keen to make sure, or to the best of my ability, I try to make sure it doesn't happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, absolutely.
It does in your head.
Yeah, I mean, I think if someone's going after a particular sound, that's one thing. But if they're writing something and that's not, and that's not Floyd enough or not Rush enough, and then you start to sort of fall into that trap of, everything, it's all interchangeable, and it could be completely just one big long piece that's hard to break up and identify individually.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky as well when you're writing, because you come up with, I wrote a piece the other day for this album I'm doing with Gordon, and it's got 3 or 4 different riffs in it. And I sort of played it through on the computer the other day, and it was like 3 minutes and 5 seconds, and I thought, all those riffs, all that stuff, and it's only 3 minutes. And I sort of thought to myself, right, well, shall I make it longer? And then I thought, well, no, the piece, it doesn't need to be longer.
Right.
But sometimes you think, I've done all that work. I remember years ago I'll digress a lot, I'm afraid.
Please do.
I did a recording session in a studio in the south of England, right in the middle of the countryside, in an old barn. And I had this drummer who still works with me to this day, Dave Wagstaff, who also plays with Wishbone Ash. Mm-hmm. And he came down, and we spent ages going through this little drum section that had to be done just so. And he said, God, this is complicated. I said, yeah, I'm sorry. It's just, I put it together and that's how it has to sound. And he kept playing, and then he got it. And he said, right, I've got it. And I said, okay, let's go, record. And he played it, and I went, stop. And he went, well, how many times have I got to play it? How long for? I said, no, it was just those 4 seconds. But, sometimes you have to get it just right.
Right.
Yeah, I remember he didn't speak to me for a bit.
Yeah. I got to tell you, we're going to go ahead and we're going to play some of your music here. There's a song that is responsible for a speeding ticket that I got a few years back. I was driving around Santa Cruz in my beat up old Honda, and it was a rainy night, and it was very stormy, just lots of sort of, electricity in the air. And on the shuffle, the song Chasing the Hounds came on.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yes, which is a very sort of driven song. And in that environment, all of a sudden I realized I was doing 85 miles an hour on a mountain road in the rain at night and having a great time until the lights started flashing behind me. So if I thought I could hold you responsible for that, I absolutely would. But no, I paid the I paid the bill. But even still, that's always been one of my favorites. Just the musicality of that song, it always reminds me of that night. now with the storm, the rain, and the lightning. So real quick, I want to go ahead and just throw this in. We're going to go ahead and play from Hounds of Baskerville. This is Chasing the Hound with Oliver Wakeman. Here we are. So now let's get back to our conversation with Oliver Wakeman. Now, you've run into Steve Hackett recently at some award show.
Yeah, I was invited to the awards show for the Classic Rock Society, which is a members-based subscription magazine in the UK. And they put on shows and they organise this awards ceremony once a year. I was lucky enough to win it, Keyboard Player of the Year, on 3 occasions. Mm-hmm. And then they wrote to me at the beginning, the end of last year actually, and just said, we're doing the awards night this year. And I thought, oh, right, yeah. And they said, well, would you like to come? And I said, yes. And they said, but, would you like to come and give out the awards? And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I said, well, yeah, to make sure I'm free. And, my diary was clear that day. So I said, yeah, okay. So I went up and gave out the awards, and, Steve Hackett won Best Guitarist. So I ended up giving him his award, which was quite an irony because I think it was 3 years prior to that. He was the guest presenter and he'd given me my award.
He gave you yours. Right. That's awesome.
But yeah, but it's nice to catch up with him. I mean, I've seen, I've seen his band play quite a few times when we've been on the road at the similar sort of times. Mm-hmm. And, years ago in my early days, I used to do graphic design, and a little known fact is I used to do the graphic design for his T-shirts and his tour programs.
Really? No, I did not know that.
No, so there's a big twisted weird path with Steve Hackett.
I'll have to be heading over to eBay there, see if I can find something. That would be awesome.
I saw some of the flyers I did. They go for a fortune. So I loaded them in my garage. I could make a quick buck.
Right on. So now you've got 10 solo albums. You've done stuff. I know there's a live CD that's recently come out with, Yes and all these things. If somebody was just getting into your music, the Oliver Wakeman Band or whatever, anything that you're involved with, where would you recommend that somebody start?
Well, a lot of the records, unfortunately, are out of license now. In fact, we're in discussions with a couple of labels about getting a lot of it reissued, mm-hmm. which is going to be really nice. So the best starting place for anybody, which is the one I've just put in the post for you actually, is the Coming to Town CD, which is a live record that was recorded back in October 2007, which was my band and myself. We went over to Poland. We got asked to play a show in Poland, which was going to be recorded for a DVD. So we went over and we recorded this show. We were supposed to have about 4 or 5 shows prior to that to get ourselves up to speed and organised. And I think the sort of mini tour we had lined up, suddenly 4 or 5 of the dates just fell through at the last minute. So we had this one show to sort of run through the set, and then we got on an aeroplane and went out to Poland. And we turned up, got out on stage, and for some reason we managed to play probably the best show we played.
Wow.
And it was all recorded for DVD. So the DVD and CD sort of double pack came out in early 2008. Then shortly after that, I obviously signed up with Yes and with the Straws. So it was kind of like a nice little bookend of the period that we'd had prior to that changing. But then they released the CD as an audio-only version. And either one's a great introductions to my music because there's quite a lot of my rock band album called Mother's Ruin on that record. And there is also a couple of tracks from the Jabberwocky album and a few from The Hound as well, or maybe it's the other way around. There's songs from at least 3 of my albums on there. So that's probably the best place to start because it gives you a fair indication of the musicality of the band, along with the musical styles from the 2 sort of rock operas and the more hard-edged rock album with a couple of ballads as well thrown in. So it's quite a good mixture to start with.
All right. Is there a track that you would like to go ahead and recommend? We'll go ahead and play on the show.
There's a track called The Agent, which is quite good fun.
Okay, and that's originally from?
It's originally from the Mother's Ruin album.
Okay.
It's quite a rocky track, but it's a good story.
Here's Oliver. All right, we are speaking with Oliver Wakeman. I got a chance to see you I think it was in Saratoga. Peter Frampton opened up for Yes.
Oh, is that the winery?
Yes, at the winery. I got a chance to see the band there. I got myself a nice little coffee mug with the Roger Dean logo I'm very proud of. Now, boy, I tell you, Yes has been taking a lot of heat lately. There's been a lot of talking going back and forth between new or current members, past members, old members who are new members again, and on and on and on. And then, of course, on Facebook, there's lots of conversation going on. You've managed to sort of stay out of all the conversation going on about it. But I mean, one day you're in the band, and then it seems to us anyway, sort of the average listener, the next day you're not. I'm sure you've been asked this question before, and so I'm sorry if it's become tedious. But if you don't mind, what the heck happened?
I'd love to be able to tell you in a really succinct way, but it's basically, as you describe it, that's what happened. We were recording prior, obviously, to the album coming out, prior to our South American tour. What happened first of all was we started writing and recording some music in Phoenix at the beginning of 2010, and we spent 3 weeks at a house all together, just writing, and I was engineering and writing and looking at Chris's songs and Steve's songs and helping with arrangements and ideas, putting parts of my songs together with parts of Chris's songs and recording Benoit. And we had a really good, fun couple of weeks. And then we went out on the summer tour, and then we came back and went into the studio in Los Angeles. And Trevor Horn became involved at that time. And I must be honest, I was there pushing, saying, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if Trevor Horn was involved?" I'm beginning to wish I could go back and see myself 2 years ago, last year, and get myself a bit of a smack round the head. But Chris and Steve got speaking to Trevor, and he initially agreed to come out and do just this one song. Nobody knew what song it was. We thought he would listen to the music we'd written and choose the song. And it turned out he wanted to do this song that he'd written with the band back in 1980. And so they wanted Trevor, and so they did this song from 1980, and that was supposed to be it. And then it kind of evolved into him wanting to do a few more tracks that he had. And I think, he likes working with Jeff, and I think he got to the point where he said, well, if you want me to keep working, I want to have Jeff here. And I think they were in a position where they could either have me or they could have Trevor and Jeff, and they made that decision. And I think that's really what happened. I stay out of all the discussions because I'm not the sort of person that likes to vent off in public or be particularly critical, because even though a decision like that obviously had a massive impact on my life and my family's life, as I'm sure people can imagine, going public and ranting and raving may be a short-term fix, but in the long term, it doesn't really solve anything. The best way to deal with something is just to look at the facts, say, okay, I don't agree with it, I didn't like what happened, but that's what's happened, and so what can I do? The best thing to do is to immerse yourself in writing and try and create something new and make use of the music that I'd spent time writing. And I still maintain that's probably the best way to be. I don't think making a big public display of a decision that hasn't gone your way is the most healthy way of dealing with something. Some people might disagree.
There's a quote that comes to mind.
So basically what happened was that we went on tour. Trevor went away for a couple of weeks, and then we carried on with other music that we'd written. And then I was due to go back out in the new year, and the plane flight kept getting delayed. And I kept hearing that, Trevor just wants to do one more of his songs, and he wants Jeff here for that. And eventually I just phoned up and said, look, when am I coming out? And they sort of said, well, you're not. So that was it. So I ended up doing this, the tour that we'd sort of part agreed to do, which was, as I'm sure you can imagine, quite difficult.
Right.
And then I did a couple of shows with them in Mexico, which were joint shows with Asia, with Jeff, which was quite difficult, as I'm sure you can imagine. But, I enjoy playing. I enjoyed being part of the history of Yes, even though I may only have a small footnote in their history, but I did do 3 years with the band.
Right.
Some parts of my music did end up on the studio album, although I haven't heard it yet. So, but the live album came out as well. So my history with Yes is quite well documented. Mm-hmm. I think 3 years with a major band like that, and to be on a couple of albums it's a nice thing to have on my CVs. It's something I'm proud of.
Right. Have other doors opened up for you since you've got Yes now on your resume?
Well, I'd like to think yes, but it's difficult to know until a record comes out and you see what the reaction is going to be. That'll be the test, because by playing with bands like Yes, and obviously I played with the Strawbs for a couple of years, playing with bands like that does open you up to their audiences. And, you know, a lot of the good thing about the Yes fans and the Strawbs fans and progressive fans in general is that they have a very open minds, that they are prepared to listen to something else by an artist that was in a band. Mm-hmm. If they, you know, saw the band, or they thought, oh, I quite liked what you did there, or that was interesting, you know. So I'm hoping that the album will come out and people will hear it, because, you know, the new solo album does have some of the music that was earmarked for that Yes album that obviously I wasn't involved with in the end. So people might hear, you know, some tracks that could have been there but weren't. Hopefully.
I'm just imagining that tour with Asia and all that. Well, that's awesome though, because, you know, from the fans' sort of point of view with everything that's going on, it just seems like, well, like you used the word healthy. You seem to have a very healthy outlook. And, you know, my father used to say you can't control the waves, but you can always adjust your sails.
Oh, that's very good. I like that. And I'll use that.
Yeah, you're welcome to. But that just seems like a very healthy attitude. And, you know, Yes has always been supposed to have been a very positive, I mean, that's the name of the band. It's a very affirmative, very positive situation. Unless, I've been told, you're in it. Then that can be a different story.
Somebody once described it as there's lots of different chairs in Yes. It's just that the keyboard chair seems to be a revolving one. It is difficult. But, you know, if you'd spoken to me a year ago, I might have answered differently. A year's worth or 6 months worth of reflection.
Yes. All right, we're talking with Oliver Wakeman. Lots of ways to keep up on you. You've got your Twitter, your Facebook, MySpace, and your website.
Yep.
Also, I was looking on YouTube. A lot of the music that, like you say, may be difficult to get, somebody at least have made some YouTube videos.
Yeah, this is very kind.
Yes. I know you don't have a whole lot of control over that sort of thing, but it's a nice way to hear some of the things that might be difficult to find. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, there's quite a few bits and pieces floating around. There is actually the company that I do a lot of the commissioned work for, which is called Blue Dot Music. They have a website that you can get to it from my website, where they have a whole playlist of music from the various albums I've done for them, which is available for people to listen to on their channel. So Blue Dot Music is their channel on YouTube.
Okay. Let me put it this way. What is something that you are listening to that maybe would surprise some people?
Harry Connick Jr. Possibly.
Yes.
I've always been a fan of his, back from that single that he did, Recipe of Love, or Recipe for Love, which I thought was a great quirky little track, and I sort of thought, oh, I quite like that. And I started listening to some of his other stuff, and I just thought it was great, because I'm not really a jazz player. I can tinkle around a few jazz chords and write a couple of little bits, but nothing. I wouldn't say I was a sort of proficient jazz player. And his ability to do jazz, swing, and sort of the crooner type of approach to music, because it's not something I actually write, I find it very enjoyable to listen to, because I'm not analysing it. With a lot of other music, I put it on and I'm listening to it and I'm analysing what's going on, what's the bass doing there, why is that doing a third instead of a, oh, that's interesting, you know. And it takes some of the enjoyment out of it. Right. So when I listen to something like his music, I just listen, and I genuinely like the fact that he does all his arrangements, he organises his band, and it's just, you know, I think the guy's immensely talented. And I genuinely enjoy listening to his stuff. I even like the album that he did, which a lot of people find a bit strange, which was the Star Turtle one.
Star Turtle. Yeah, I love that CD.
Yeah, because it was a bit sort of a bunch of New Orleans jazz musicians all trying to do rock, but not really knowing what they were doing. And I thought it sounded great, I genuinely really enjoyed it. I thought, the first time I put it on, I thought, what's he doing? But then I grew to love it. Yeah.
Have you ever seen him live?
No, I haven't. The closest I got was I was on tour with Yes, and for some reason I was just looking at my phone, and everybody in the band knew I was a Harry Connick Jr. fan, and somebody said to me, he's just checked in front of us. And I said, no. And they said, Harry Connick Jr. I went, oh, brilliant. And I couldn't wait to get through security to get to the waiting area for the aeroplane to see if he was there, because I was going to, go up and introduce myself.
Right.
And he was heading to Canada, and we were heading down south, and I think he went to a different gate. And that was sort of excitement followed by a bit of disappointment, because I thought, oh no, if only I'd just not been looking at my phone for 2 minutes, I might have seen him. But I just like to have said that, even though he wasn't in the style of music that I play, I had a lot of admiration for him.
Right. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to mention? Anything you want to bring up?
Well, if anybody's in the UK and they want to come and see Gordon and I play, it's going to be in October at the end of this year. We're going to be doing 4 or 5 shows, and then there's the UK tour in March next year. And if people want to get us to come over to America, or my band to come over to America, we need to show the record company that takes the record that they can sell records there. So people need to create a demand.
Okay.
But no, it'd be lovely to come over to America and play with my band. But it's the one thing I would say is this last year, as I'm sure as people see the Yes stories flying around, and I know there's more going on now with Benoit and the new guy coming in, and this long running saga that Yes seem to insist on doing. A lot of the Yes fans have been remarkably supportive for me over the last year, and I've received so many emails and comments, and I do see what people write on forums and on Facebook. I mean, people have gone out of their way to say some really nice things. Even some people that I saw who looked at some YouTube stuff and couldn't really hear what the keyboards were doing and weren't that pleased about it. And then when they heard the live album, came out and said, no, this guy was really good. And to see people go out of their way to write comments in my defense, or to just say, keep your chin up, it meant an awful lot. I mean, as you can imagine, it was quite a difficult time. And to read that other people were fighting your corner that you didn't know, really, really did help. I mean, it meant an awful lot. So to those people that did that, or even just thinking it, I'm truly grateful.
Is that Oliver, is that a lava lamp that I see behind you?
It is, yeah. Yeah, it's in the corner. It's not plugged in at the moment. Yeah, that comes out occasionally.
For the special occasion of this interview, we have the lava lamp. I'm very touched.
What else have I left in the background?
I don't suppose that keyboard is on. If you feel like throwing a little something out for us, that would be awesome.
Oh, what's there? Actually, it's because we've just moved house. It's got all. It's being used as a table for all the change of addresses at the moment. I don't even know what's plugged on in here at the moment. What sound have I got in here? There we go. That's the CDs going off the edge. What have we got here? That's not a great sound, but we'll see what comes. But we'll see what comes. How's that?
Very nice. Thank you.
There's a couple of duffers in there somewhere.
We'll make that the Romans World theme.
Well,
Oliver, thank you so much for taking the time to sit with me.
It's been a pleasure.
Appreciate it, and we're going to be enjoying a lot of your music through the course of this show and in shows coming up as well. So definitely keep us posted. We'll keep an eye on all the different websites where we can find anything. And once again, thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. I did just tweet that we were just doing this interview, so as soon as it comes out, let me know and I'll send the note out.
Absolutely will. I will.
It's a track called Wall of Water.